Hi, Scott.
How are you?
How are you? So I guess we're gonna jump straight to the questions if you're ready already. So we
Sure.
have a few interesting questions actually prepared. So I think it's gonna be a super engaging talk we have here. So just wanted to start about your background as well, and you've done a lot of things in your life already, and whether being an entrepreneur, representing artists, or speaking at events, you've spent your career in the music industry. So we were just wondering, what is it about music and the music industry that has kept you so involved and so engaged?
Well, I mean, who doesn't love music? I mean, to me, it's like a dream career to have, to be in the music industry. Um, but with that said, I think what I really love is the business of music. I like digging in and seeing how it's changed decade over decade, and am super excited about what's coming next.
Would you say that it would be a strictly different industry from, for example, movies and video? Kind of.
I would say that because it's always been that. If you rewind, you know, 50 years, and go, you know, I don't know, 1970, all right? So the 60s, there was a whole bunch of new technologies, and it was around things like color television and FM radio and the album format. But then you get into the 70s, and it was around things around portability, the cassette, and the became the main format at that point because you could take it with you. And then you move into the 80s, and all of a sudden the CD is the dominant format that didn't exist before. And then MTV comes along, and then you get into the 90s, and by the end of the 90s, now you have the web, and even Napster comes, and people are consuming things differently. And you get into the early parts of the 2000s, that first decade, and then you have things like the iTunes download store, and you have YouTube, and this is the way people consume. And then we get into today's world around social media and streaming. And so my thought is, of course it's going to change in the next decade, because it changed every other decade before. And it's not because of COVID-19 or anything else. It's because that's what happens.
It's very interesting, as you have seen it all happen in front of your eyes. So last year, you actually became the Chief Innovation Officer at Warner Music. And this was actually a newly created position at the company. So maybe you can tell me a little bit about why was there a need for such a position? Who came up with this need, and what are you actually working on as the Chief Innovation Officer?
um, well, it's kind of what I just described. If it's always changing, then we should probably be in a position where we're expecting it to change again, but instead of trying to predict what's going to happen, we could probably look out on the horizon and see what things in the environment are changing. And everything I described was essentially driven by technology changes. So when I look out, what is coming on the horizon in different technologies that will impact our industry? And instead of trying to predict it, we can start to predetermine our future and prepare for it. And hopefully go, gently into that next phase without a tremendous amount of disruption, and it'll feel very natural. And so on a day-to-day level, day-to-day basis, yes, I'm looking out into the future and trying to prepare for it, but I'm also primarily acting as an interface between our data and our tech divisions and our recorded music. Because if you think about the music industry, everybody we're dealing with is in our tech companies. Amazon, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Google, TikTok. These are all tech companies. And so we have large tech teams and large data teams. And I'm just trying to help bridge that gap and bring those teams together a little closer, because you put the content and the creative part of our business with the tech part, and now it makes us quite a force.
Yeah, that's true. So with all this change and all this introduction of this new technology and music going online, how has actually this impacted the artists and the record label companies and the whole industry? I mean, adapting to the online commerce of music.
Well, that's the thing. As I said, it's always been changing, and every time it changes, what you see is supremely talented artists thriving in this new environment. So, it could be everything from, you can rewind as far as you want. When we were able to do the first recording artists came in. I mean, this wasn't always a thing. When radio came and you could broadcast, when instruments were plugged in and amplified, what did it, so there were electric guitars, but what happened when you handed one to Jimi Hendrix?
Yeah.
There was this new album format, but what did Pink Floyd do with it and created Dark Side of the Moon? There was music on television, and then MTV comes around, and what does Madonna do? And so there's always people thriving in these changes. And so more recently, you see YouTube stars or TikTok stars. So I just see that whatever the changes are, the real artists will take that and find new ways to express themselves. And you then see why they're great artists, because they see that and explode it into something that we couldn't even imagined.
Yeah, so they see it as an opportunity.
Yes, the great ones do.
Yeah. Speaking of adaptation, we're obviously in some challenging and changing times now. So how significant impact has this pandemic had on Warner Music and the whole music industry as such?
Well, the pandemic has had an impact on everyone in the world, essentially. I don't know that there's ever been quite something like this, that truly everyone in the world has been impacted, and every business has been impacted. What I would say is that you shouldn't only think that it's all negative. That one, people haven't stopped listening to music and never will. And art and music is always part of the human condition and things that we need. But there's tons of positive coming out of it. Artists are still releasing music, and if anything, they're getting more creative in how they're connecting to their audiences. And they seem to be more in tune with what their audience wants. And again, it's not every audience and every artist wants the same thing, but there's certainly some people that want something uplifting and happy, and some people want the mood to be more reflective of what their environment is. But that's what great artists do. They tap into that. And so as an organization, we are continuing to support our artists in every possible way for them to continue to release music and touch their audiences.
Yeah, that's very true. Recently, Warner Music opened new affiliate companies in India and Vietnam. So is this some kind of reaction to the current situation, or was this the plan all along?
It was always the plan. That's not part of, like, in the middle of COVID-19, somebody comes up with an instant idea, let's open our new offices in India. So it just happened to coincide with this. Yeah. But I will say, opening the new office in Vietnam has been extraordinary. I think, God, I mean, this is public. I don't want to be quoted, but I think we had the number one album that week, or the number one song, or maybe the top three. It was quite a way to open an office.
Good. So now with the social distancing, the physical distancing, let's call it that way, we are staying at home. So and many industries have kind of gone to this live streaming just to try to tackle the challenges of not being able to gather in single place, right? So how is this being adapted in the music industry, and are artists now thinking of maybe throwing some virtual concerts or somehow adopting other technologies to actually fill the space?
Yeah. You know, I'm sure everyone has already begun encountering this. So, you know, there's Songkick Live, which has been putting on a series of concerts from artists' homes, which has been quite successful. And it's really that part that I was talking about of connecting artists and fans in new ways that feel way more intimate in a way. You know, like if you're on stage at a concert and the lights are in your eyes and you could be in front of 50,000 people and not see them. And look at us, we're you know, how far apart physically, yet we seem very connected, and they're finding new ways of connecting that way. You know, I look at Warner Music Spain that did a festival out of Madrid online with 23 of their artists. And part of it was also to get the message out to the younger people to stay inside and do the social distancing. So it was both, you know, playing music and satiating the fans, but it was also delivering a message. Or Charlie XCX doing her lockdown diaries on Instagram, or even Neil Young. You know, Neil Young's got in on it, and he's doing his fireside sessions. So he's online. Last week, no, I think it was now 2 weeks ago, my favorite was Dua Lipa, and she was scheduled to be on the Late Late Show with James Corden, but obviously couldn't do it. So rather than cancel, came up with a super creative way to do a performance online. And so it was like a screen like we're on, you know, like Zoom, with different blocks. And in those blocks, all her musicians were remotely playing, her backing dancers, she's singing. And I thought, fuck, that was so cool and clever and ingenious, and finding new ways of getting out there if you can't physically get on the road and tour.
Maybe we're just needing a little more adaptation of virtual reality, and it would be almost
exactly.
Yeah. So not necessarily relating to the music industry, but maybe what kind of trends have you been noticing now from businesses and in managing this crisis? There is some trends, right? Something different happening now.
Well, rather than, you know, I'll put these trends.
Well, trend is not a trendy word.
Not a good word. I'll make it binary. So people reacting to the crisis and thriving, and people reacting to it and collapsing and going, oh my God, my website's overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I can't fill orders. I don't have this. So I have a friend, Nick Rizzi, who used to be in the music industry, and he has a wine business in London. And what he does is he imports wines from small vineyards across Europe, always special bottles, you know, like organic. They only produced 500 bottles. Each one's numbered, all kinds of really special wines. And his business was supplying them to all the restaurants in the area, all the really upscale, nice restaurants that want special bottles to go with their meals. Well, overnight, London says lockdown, restaurants must close, and he's out of business. But within 2 days, he launched his direct-to-consumer business to say, all right, people aren't going to stop drinking wine, but they're not going to get it at the restaurant, and they can't go to the store. I'm going to go into a delivery business. And the day I ordered my wine from him, I ordered just 6 bottles. I was like number 7 of 30 deliveries he had. Like, people were like, yeah, I'll take a case. I'll take a case. Like, his business is thriving. And so my point is, aside from all the negative impacts, of course, people are suffering in in so many ways, from, you know, personal lives to people getting sick or family members to being trapped in their homes. I'm not diminishing that at all, but there's also a lot of businesses that can respond to this and not just collapse and say, well, I don't know what to do. So he literally turned his business, you know, in a 2-day period over a weekend, and is completely set up differently.
Yeah. So you've previously also talked a lot about the importance of actionable data and emerging social platforms for increasing actually the artists or a brand growth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from a marketing point of view, what should our approach be to minimize the crisis impact, or even succeed and grow actually in this time?
Well, always it's to focus on where the growth areas are. Okay. So when we were releasing music, you know, it's like, okay, then the artist will go on tour, then there'll be the merch business and this, and you have all these levers. Oh, they'll go on, you know, live television, they'll visit the radio stations, you know, like lots of old school stuff, but still super important. And all that's taken away. That's not going to happen. So we focus on, you know, what are the growth areas? Like, but where are the people? They don't disappear. They're just not there. So where are they? And how are they consuming? Are they consuming it differently? Are they using different platforms, the same platforms? You know, what do they want? Do they want this? Do they want uplifting music because they're tired of being in their house? They want something that they can work out to? Or do they want something that's, you know, slow and down and have a glass of wine and chill out? So what do they want, and how are we going to deliver that to them? You know, and in a bigger way, like, how are we going to delight them? How are we going to give them something that they weren't even necessarily thinking of, and we just make it that much more special, you know? And finally, how do we involve them in this? You know, instead of just pushing at them, how do we like say, okay, you are there, I'm here, let's do stuff together. And you know, my previous examples of all these kind of online events is exactly that. It's getting closer to the customer on the platforms that customers are actually at, and having a much deeper connection.
Yeah. So assuming the world goes back to normal in a few months, hopefully, do you expect things to revert back to the old ways, or we are going to adapt some of these ways to interact with our people, our fans, our customers, or from technology perspective, or it's going to be just like nothing happened and we go in the same way?
Yeah, it's a good question, and you know, what I believe is not this isn't a prediction. You know, I'm not going to predict the future, but I believe in many ways things go back to normal. That it feels normal, except there's a little edge taken off. You know, it's like if I used to go to the grocery store and now I'm ordering my food online. Maybe everyone will still continue to go to the grocery store, but maybe 5 or 10% of the people go, you know what, I'll just order online. Something I never used to do.
Yeah.
But it starts to creep in, you know, and when I look at all the technology, you know, a lot of this, no, all of this has already existed. There's not new technology. What it's done is maybe accelerate the adoption of it. You know, streaming a gig online, this is not new, but wow, now lots more people are doing it, to the extent that it won't go away. It's like we will go back to normal. People will go to concerts and festivals and gigs and go to parks and go hang out. That will come back. But there's also something that's happening during this period that'll carry through and take us into the new world.
Right. One of the casualties of this crisis is the ability to hold events. So including eCOM360 in Riga, where you were actually scheduled to appear as a speaker as well. And
and I'm really sad because I absolutely love Riga. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. And the last time I was actually in Riga, then I went out to see the countryside of Latvia, which was extraordinary. So I'm quite sad that I wasn't there.
So
or not there now.
since the event is postponed to October now, can you share maybe what attendees can expect from you in the session at the in-person event that's going to happen?
If I'm being really honest, I have no fucking idea. This is this special moment, and that to me is what's going to make it so interesting. Like, we're all going through this together, and then at some time in the nearish future, we're going to be back together again. And what are we going to talk about? I don't know. And what lessons will we have learned? What will we have predicted will happen that doesn't? What will we get wrong or right? Like, I don't know yet. That's what's going to make it so fascinating.
Yeah, but we're sure to be getting some good insights from you. So, and summarizing from today's interview, on the last month and a half globally, do you have any tips or suggestions you would give to better overcome this crisis for people in general and for maybe brands as well?
Yeah, I mean, maybe obviously acknowledge that we're in this crisis and understand, what businesses and people and artists are going through, but also taking bold steps to address it. It's acknowledge it and say, okay, this is our new reality, or at least our reality today. We're not going to go into a bunker. We're going to go, out there and make the best of it and look for those opportunities, because anytime there's a crisis, there's opportunities right in there at the same time. And ultimately focus on the positive impact that we can have, and not just, shirk our responsibilities and collapse under this. It's like, all right, this is what we have. This is what we should be doing, and look for the positive opportunities in all of this.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Always great.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
Yeah.